man, but as a 1970s girl. As an outsider, Hyacinth suffers at the hands of her peers at school and society at large, but also at the hands of her Jamaican father, who is both violent and a sexual predator. He looms as a grotesque, threatening figure who finally acts upon what his daughter fears. Riley writes, "Incest, incest," the word drummed in her ears as she felt his hands pinching and pawing her. Unquote. Hyacinth escapes actual rape, leaves home, is fostered out, and never sees her father again. When she finally returns to the utopian Jamaica she has kept alive in her dreams, it is a huge disappointment, and she feels as unbelonging there as she does in Britain. Carol Boyce Davis describes how Hyacinth becomes a manifestation of this sense of unbelonging, a sense of feeling unwanted, which parallels the dream of going back home. Riley was one of the first of my generation to explore the triple whammy of race, class, and gender in a novel. In post-colonial London, John MacLeod assesses that Riley's, quote, often unsettling representation of diasporic life in London perhaps owes something to the moment, unquote. Riley does heap tragedy upon woe, but unlike The Colour Purple, the novel's most obvious precursor, there is no hope, redemption, or support of sisterhood in Riley's tale. When Barbara Smith wrote about The Colour Purple in The Guardian in 1986 that the sexual politics and sexual violence in the black community were matters that needed to be confronted and changed, she might as well have been referring to the unbelonging. At the time, I didn't like Riley's negative portrayal of black British life, but with hindsight, it seems inevitable that Riley used her moment to speak out, to answer back, to give voice to the silence, with an underlying rage and despair that was incredibly bleak, especially in her depiction of an immigrant father who was anything but his daughter's guardian and protector. Riley's moment did not, however, begin a movement. Black British novels by women did not take off en masse in the 1980s. It was only in the 1990s that the wave of black British fiction that exists today began to gain momentum, with writers born or raised in Britain and either identified as British or negotiating their relationship to Britain. This era also saw the rise of novels by women that continues today, with women's fiction at the forefront, published often by large publishing houses. Andrea Levy's first novel, Every Light in the House Burning, was one of the first by a British-born black woman, and as such explored the 1960s childhood of the daughter of Jamaican immigrants, with parents like Levy's own, who had arrived in Britain in 1948. However, unlike the father in The Unbelonging, Mr. Jacob is portrayed through the eyes of his young daughter as a benign, responsible father who descends into illness, dependency, and eventually death. Levy's second novel, Never Far From Nowhere, published in '96, looked at two teenage sisters coming of age in the 1970s and explored the interrelationship of race, gender, generation, home, and identity, something that predominated through much of this second-generation fiction. During the 1990s, writers such as Sade Adeniran, Simi Bedford, Mallory Blackman, Yaba Badeau, Judith Bryan, Pat Cumper, Yvette Edwards, Diana Evans, Laura Fish, Joe Hodges, Catherine Johnson, Andrea Levy, Valerie Mason-John, Millie Murray, Jenny MacLeod, Helen Oyeyemi, Leonie Ross, Joanna Traynor, Vanella Fuller, Gemma Weeks, Ifiona Fulani, and Vanessa Williams, and many others, also wrote debut novels mainly about black girls and/or young women. Quite a few of these debut novels were arguably Bildungsroman, or novels of transformation, as defined by Mark Stein in Black British Literature, in which he asserts a critical standpoint that this literature is, quote, about the formation of its protagonists, but importantly, it is also about the transformation of British society and cultural institutions, unquote. Indeed, the commonalities of gender, generational conflict, racism, fostering adoption, parental control, family separation, and biracial identities expand the genre beyond the personal and individual into the communal and cultural. Alison Donnell notes in 20th century Caribbean literature, quote,